Wink.
Magic.
Huh? Life is good.
That's good.
Everything goes up, open up. Keep trying.
So, we are going to begin the Wednesday, December 18th, Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting. I ask that everybody please silence your cell phones and take any conversation into the hallway. If you need to come up and address the commission, please come up, sit in one of these chairs, state your name, and speak directly into the microphone so that you're picked up on the audio video. And with that, we will begin with public meeting, public comment on items not being heard tonight. Any public comment? Okay. Seeing not, the following items are continued tonight. Under notices of intent, we have Eli Zabar, which is continued until June 24th. We have 46 Shimo Pond Road Nominee Trust, continued until January 8th. And then in certificates of compliance, we have Rock Ganella, trustee of the North Nominee Trust, 73 Easton Street, continued until January 8th. Nantucket Wheelhouse LLC at 13 Massachusetts Avenue is continued until January 8th. John Moeller, 10 Monomoy Creek Road, SE 482797 and SE 482801 are both continued until January 8th. Monomoy Creek Nominee Trust at 12 Monomoy Creek Road is continued until January 8th. And then Alice Rochat is also continued until January 8th. So with that, we'll begin under notices of intent. Bonnie L. Sacerdote, trustee at 19 Kimball Avenue.
I got more.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, and also to introduce you guys know Chloe. She's been before you before. It's Chloe Coggins is now with Nantucket Surveyors and been helping me out on some of the environmental filings, and you'll see her before the board, I'm sure, in the coming future. All right. So this is a notice of intent application for property owner Bonnie Sacerdote at 19 Kimball Avenue. It is an application for permanent sand drift fencing. This ties into two other projects that we've done in this general area. Number 9 Kimball Avenue, which is Kimball Sherborne LLC to the east, and also Clockfort Partners, which is number 17 Kimball Avenue, is also to the east of the property. This is to continue this sand drift fencing. In this particular area, it's approximately 90 linear feet, with the exception of a small section that would be open where there's an existing beach stairs that goes from the developed portion of the lot to the beach. The area itself, regulated area, is coastal dune. It's also land within land subject to coastal storm flowage, and we are adjacent to a coastal bank. It is the same standard detail that NHESP has required on the previous two applications. At this point, we have a DEP file number. We do not, however, have a final review from NHESP. So we will be asking for a continuance for the work proposed. Again, with the other projects, the intent is to put the sand drift fencing in place, let the sand accumulate in the area between the fencing and the face of the dune. We do have a provision in here for voluntary sand placement, which is the same that we've done on the prior two applications. At this point, we've not had to do that on either one of those applications. The fences worked pretty effectively in this area. Again, this is Kimball Avenue, so we're on the sound area, and the fencing has accumulated quite a bit of sand since the previous two have been put in. Both of those we've not had to put any sand fill in either one of those applications. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Again, the detail for the sand drift fencing is kind of evolved from what we used to do a few years back into what NHESP is requiring for certain intricacies with the fencing, spacing, provisions to not allow predatory birds to hopefully perch on these areas, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I just had a question about, so the properties on either side are also have already established this fencing?
Both properties to the east. The west
That's
is
right.
not.
And that's an unoccupied, or it's?
No, it's a developed piece of property.
It is a developed piece, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Some of the,
You mean to the west?
to the west, to the west, yeah. That would be 23 Kimball Ave Realty Trust. Some of those properties down there do put in that snow fencing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, whether they permit it or not, I don't know, but that snow fencing, you know, they do have some of that going further down. But what we have is, to the east is 2 permitted, which is number 9 and number 17 are both permitted, sand drift fencing. A little bit longer, and those properties a little bit wider at the shoreline, but it would be a similar situation to that. I think if you look through the photos within the application, you'll see a picture showing kind of the.
So is that last easterly view a proposed fence location? Because I was going to ask you, is that the fence that's on that, is that the, maybe I'm looking backwards, the last photo?
Easterly view of proposed fence.
The bottom picture?
Yes,
that-
That's where it'll go.
that is where it's going to go in that particular area there.
So that, the fence that we see on the left of this photograph is not on...
That's one of those, that's a,
Is that on the subject property, or?
No, it's not on the
It's
subject property.
Okay,
That's
that's what I
separate.
was trying to
Yeah.
establish.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you can kind of see the westerly view up above. You get a picture of kind of how it's working out there.
What it will look like.
Yeah, so,
Thank you.
okay.
Any other questions from the commission? Good. All right, questions from the public? No. So we're waiting on Heritage?
Yes.
If there are no other questions from the commission, then would you like to continue to the next meeting?
Yes, please.
So this will continue until January 8th. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to Patrick S. Keating at 49 Red Barn Road.
Again, thank you, Paul Santos, on behalf of the property owner, Patrick S. Keating, along with Chloe Coggins from Nantucket Surveyors. This is a notice of intent application for the proposed relocation of an existing dwelling which is located adjacent to an eroding coastal bank out at 49 Red Barn Road, which is essentially out in the west end of the island, out past Long Pond, Massasoit Road Bridge, and if you work your way back out in that area, this is a piece of property that is located in that general vicinity. The majority of the site is basically abutted by Nantucket Conservation Foundation land, so if you look at an aerial of the area, the house is kind of sitting out there pretty much by itself. We were before the commission a few years back, and at which time we replaced an existing septic tank and leaching pit and put in a current code compliant septic system on the property. This application does not affect the septic system in any way. The septic system is located as far away as we could get it at the time that we did that application. This application proposes to take the existing dwelling, pick it up, move it to the most extreme northerly corner of the subject parcel, reconnect to the existing septic system, and utilize the existing well that services the property. The subject property did, I believe, receive last week or 2 weeks ago a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals to place the subject house where it is shown on our site plan, as it's closer than the typical zoning setbacks would allow, but they did seek and receive variances to place the subject property, the subject house, in the location as shown on the plan. The resource areas themselves are Coastal Bank and Coastal Dune. We are within the buffer zones to both of those resource areas. There is a vegetated wetland to the north of the subject property, but that is has been flagged, but we are outside of the 100-foot regulated area to that vegetated wetland. The site is located within NHESP jurisdiction. Similar to the prior application, we do have our DEP file number. We do not, however, have comments yet from NHESP, and we'll be seeking a request to continue this application to the next meeting. The site itself is above regulated flood zone. While it is a eroding coastal bank, the location that we are going to still does fall within the criteria of your coastal bank setback, which says that in addition to a 50-foot setback, 20 times the annual erosion rate, and up to 100 feet, whichever is the lesser. We do, while we're at the limit of where we can go on the property, we do at least meet the 100-foot setback to the eroding coastal bank. So, again, the owner understands there's limited life to the property, but we are, at least from that end of it, able to do this essentially without requesting any waivers, as we do meet that 100-foot setback. I think the erosion rate in this area, when you look at the CZM maps, is approximately 11.5 feet per year in this particular area, and I do believe we included within the notice a copy of the CZM mapping. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Again, the application itself is to pick up this structure, move it, grade, loam seed and grade, stabilize the area where the existing dwelling is. It's a crawl space. It's not a full basement underneath the existing dwelling. And once it's moved, they'll modify, make smaller the decking and the entranceways and so forth to gain access to the structure itself. Existing well stays in place. Existing septic stays in place. And again, happy to answer any questions that you may have. We did show on this so you get a sense of the change between 2017 and 2019. The top of the coastal bank that we have there is 2017 was when we did the septic system, and you can see where it is as current to this application. So the west, this shoreline, not so much last winter, but the previous winter, we had those 3 nor'easters in a row, and we lost, in some cases, 30, 40, and I've got a property that lost 50 feet down in this area, and 2 winters ago. So they're not planning any, no stabilization of the bank, right? It's just, we're just picking it up and going where we can go with it right now, and that's it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What happens to the buried propane tank, and then how is the back deck to be altered?
Well, they were going to, I think, do away with that big wraparound deck. I mean, again, they're moving kind of quickly here because they want to try to get this done quickly. So I don't even know if they've gone to HDC yet, Joe, with plans yet. My intention of the altering was to keep it outside, was obviously to keep it outside the 100. Right. I mean, that was what the intent would be. I mean, he had told me they were going to take it off. I just labeled it to be altered. So.
But the tank?
Propane tank, I think we're going to have, quite honestly, I didn't even mention it on there, but we'll probably end up having to pick that up and move it also. Okay. I think they'll probably move that as far away as we can. I think the intent would be to get everything as far away. Yeah. The power is all up in the on the northerly portion of the property too. So
they didn't want to move it just because of the distance.
Yeah. I mean, right now we're 12 feet off that one corner of the deck, and I believe that's almost 20. I think it's 24, 25 feet between 17 and 19 that they lost on that backside. So I mean, you potentially could be one storm, 2 storms away from that deck being. For sure. Hanging over the edge.
Most of the existing lot is actually underwater.
Oh, this is the existing.
yeah.
I mean, it is amazing when you look at the lot itself, right. Or even go back and look at even this whole area. Go back at Starbuck Road, and you don't have to go back too far when you look at these properties. And I think we did, the last one we did on Starbuck, when, I know the owner, they left a bunch of photos on the property, and they had pictures off the back deck, and it was this expanse to the water, and now they're hanging over the edge. So it is, like I said, this area has experienced quite a bit of impact in the last few years. So that's the application. As I said, we do not have NHESP. It is completely mapped NHESP. I know there's a lot of data in this area because the Conservation Foundation and Land Bank has done some mapping out in here. So I don't suspect, didn't appear to me that there was anything specific in the area where the dwelling is going. I mean, I look for stuff that I could look for this time of year, St. Andrews Cross, things like that, but nothing. I mean, it's hard to see this time of year what's out there, but I don't know what NHESP will come back with. But it is, for the most part, this is actually going in the area where the driveway is already existing, you know.
So you're okay with the standard conditions to monitor the revegetation where the house comes out and clean up anything that might be left as it would fall to the beach, irrigation, anything of
Sure,
that nature?
yep, they understand. The septic has actually already been, because the leach pit was actually to the left of the existing dwelling. That tank and pit was all removed as part of the septic system install. So the only, we can see, you see where the power is coming in now. We know where the power is. Joe had mentioned the tank, but other than that, there's nothing out in the back. There used to be, actually, and anyone familiar with the property years ago, there wasn't actually another structure that has since been lost that was over in this general area. And then they had a radio tower. I think there was a radio tower out here. I think it was a ham there was something with a radio tower that went back in the old permitting. And they had another dwelling in that radio tower sitting over there that they used to have. Those have long been since lost.
It was a ham radio relay station for the island.
Oh, is
Now
that-
it's on Eel Point.
Oh, is that right? Okay, yeah. So,
Yeah, I know this is a highly productive northern harrier nesting area, so Heritage might come back with something
Yeah.
on that, but
So.
we'll see what they say.
okay.
Any other questions, comments from the commission? Questions from the public? All right, seeing not, would you like to continue until January 8th?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this will continue until January 8th.
All right, thanks, Paul.
And moving on to Britannia Nantucket Incorporated, 81 Squam Road. Wow. I've read this as Britannica each time I've looked at this, and it was the first time I caught that wasn't it.
Again, thank you, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the property owner, also Chloe Coggins. We're moving from the shoreline, I guess, here to inland. This is a piece of property at 81 Squam Road, a completely developed piece of property in which the applicant is proposing to do a addition to the existing second dwelling on the structure. That addition entails essentially a garage add-on with some living space above the structure itself. The regulated area is a bordering vegetated wetland that runs in through the center of the property, and it is depicted on the plan to the north of the existing driveway. Septic system is to the north of the driveway. You have the existing dwelling, pool, pergola, and associated outbuildings. Subject property is above any flood zone. The foundation system is a shallow slab because it's a garage. Based on the groundwater testing for the leaching trenches, there is no need for a groundwater waiver for the foundation system. And it's a pretty straightforward application. We will have to relocate the existing septic tank just to keep it 10 feet off the existing slab. As of right now, it would be too close to the existing slab once we construct the garage system. We will have to file with Board of Health with regard to relocation of the pump pit and chamber and connection to the existing septic system itself. Again, we do have our DEP file number in this one. It is not mapped under NHESP, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. The structure itself, again, no waivers required. It's outside of the 50-foot setback, and in fact, the area in which the structure is going is essentially now it's a driveway. It's existing shell drive that we're replacing with the addition to the cottage. And that's the extent of the application.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Where is the new location for the tank and pump chamber gonna be?
I'm just going to twist it and keep it 10 feet off the, it's going to stay in that general location. I just got to get it 10 feet off the slab.
So
Yeah.
just move it.
I'm just going to slide it either forward or twist it to run parallel with the existing slab. So,
Any other questions from commissioners? Questions from the public? No. Do we have everything to close on this one? One last shot questions? None? Paul, would you like to close?
please.
Is there a motion?
Motion to close?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're going to sit down for a while.
We're moving on to 100R Wauwinet Road Nominee Trust at 100R Wauwinet Road.
Good evening, Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant. Proposed project involves septic upgrade to an IA system. A small portion of work activities occur within the buffer zone to an isolated vegetated wetland on the northerly abutting property. No work is proposed within 100 feet to the top of the coastal bank. And the proposed work within the commission's jurisdiction is limited to replacing the septic tank and adding the microfast IA unit and a force main up to the proposed leach field, which is outside the 100-foot buffer zone. And the existing leach fields will be pumped and backfilled per Title V requirements. And, all work activities within lawn area, and there's erosion control proposed between the work activities and the off-site wetland to the north. Turn over to questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Questions from the public? All right, Joe, do we have everything we need to close this one? Brian, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion?
Motion to close.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
So then moving on to Rec 21 WP LLC at 21 Washing Pond Road.
Yeah.
I bet we're here.
Good evening, David Haines for the applicant. What is proposed here for work in the buffer zone to Washington Pond and the abutting BVW is the construction of a pool deck and landscaping in that area and grading. The house is outside of the buffer zone. It is being worked on, and I think it's been removed. It's been removed from the site and is being a new one is being built. All that work is outside of the buffer zone. The work includes the construction of the pool, and the grading, and the landscaping. All the vegetation is indigenous and no cultivars, so it's been designed like that. The work inside, there's work down to 25, but greater than 50% of the area between 25 and 50 is remaining in its natural state, and there are all structures are outside of 100 feet or outside of 50 feet. The bottom of the pool is down around elevation 16, and the water table's down around 6, so we're not within 2 feet of the water table. The pool filter will be a canister type system with no discharge. No water will discharge into the buffer zone. There is grading down to 25 feet. But prior to the start of work, a siltation fence will be put in, shown on the plan, and then work will proceed from there. There'll be an extra 400 feet of silt fence if it's needed. And basically that's the project. It's outside of natural heritage. No filing with them. We do have a file number from DEP.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, David, when you say that the grading is going to be at 25 feet, is that for the pool and the patio?
Yes, yeah, but it goes down, is within 50 to 25. Some of it is in there. Most of the site is not, no work is happening between 50 and 25. It's just,
It's a fairly, the drop-off is continuous.
Yeah.
Right. So, will it be easily visible from the other side of the pond? I'm just curious.
I don't,
When you're saying that, so how is it going to be leveled? I guess that's what I'm asking. Are you going to be adding a great deal to it? Or is it going to be digging into the bank? That's what I don't fully understand.
no, it's, it will be filled in there. There will be filled probably 1 or 2 feet, maybe 3 or 4 feet up right next to the wall. But I mean, it won't be. Basically, the contour, there is a slight area where it dips in. That will be filled out. It'll be more straight across, and there'll probably be 2 to 3 feet of fill in some areas. Probably in the most it will be in there, and then it'll grade into the existing slope. You probably
It'll
blow.
be like a 2-foot step down. It'll be like a 2-foot step down from the patio to the grade at the
Right.
front of it on the
Yeah,
southern side, southwest side.
and they're trying to smooth the slope out for them in there to make it fit in better.
Well, they got 2 steps to the path from the
Right.
edge of the.
So there'll be a slight
Patio.
a wall there. And then that path goes down and it hooks into what is an existing path down to the pond. The only thing that's going to happen there, they don't need to do any structural work, put in any steps. They're just going to maintain it at the width that it's at now.
So it ties in right at the 25-foot line.
Yes. Yep.
Any other questions from the commission?
Yeah, I'm confused about the landscaping plan. You say that everything's indigenous and there's not cultivars, but I see cultivars, non-native plants, and hybrids on this list.
Well,
And it looks like some of them are outside of the 50-foot, but some of them might be inside, depending on where things get placed.
I was assured that everything inside of 50 was indigenous
Yeah,
and not cultivar. And
I think we've been adding a standard condition, just memorializing that, so
Yeah.
we'll just make sure that goes in.
that's fine. I expect that. I hope for that.
Thank you. And this is a site where the silt fence being maintained well will be very
Is critical.
important.
That's why I put an extra 400 feet of silt fence.
Like I almost feel like you want like a straw wattle at the bottom of it.
I
Reinforce.
that would be excellent.
Okay. So
I think
you
that
okay
would.
with that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
You're gonna
With a
remove any of the
slope.
phragmites
With a
on
slope,
site?
yeah.
We weren't proposing to get into that. Maybe at a later date we would do that.
Seems like a lot, 20%.
Excuse me?
Seems like a lot, there's 20% of it. So,
There was just one, that was in that one plat, that was not continuously along the pond, that was
Okay.
right where I did it. And that was because it went to basically open water, and it was coming up out of the open water.
Any other questions or thoughts from the commission? Questions from the public? Okay. Joe, do we have everything we need to close this one? All right, if there are no more questions, is there a motion to close?
Motion closed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice holiday.
Thank you.
So moving on to 262 Pulpus Road Nominee Trust at 262 Pulpus Road.
What's that? Just the second sheet. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing applicant property owner. This site permanent markers along that lawn edge to clearly demarcate this restoration area. There's on number 12, the natural heritage boundary does extend into the restoration area, so we are waiting for the determination letter from NHESP. Unfortunately, otherwise, everything else on the both properties is looking great. There's a ton of revegetation plantings that went into this on both properties, and we submitted a monitoring report that for the cumulative of both properties. But you know, this was something that I had observed in September, and now I'm before you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around moving from majority tree dominated vegetation than majority shrub dominated vegetation. And I understand that the idea is to not cover the canopy to allow the sassafras saplings to regenerate. But I would ask if the applicant would install equal or greater biomass to the estimated amount of biomass that was lost by cutting the trees, and base your planting plan based on how much material you think was taken out.
Basically getting at, are you looking to see like sassafras, more sapling plants out there, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was a sassafras dominated area before,
yeah.
and it's gonna. I know the goal is to get it back to that, but if we just allow the saplings to regenerate, it's gonna be 20 or 30 years before the size that was there before. So interspersing some taller saplings in as well, or you know, even just one or two mature trees to jumpstart the process with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can selectively and carefully locate those. I mean, obviously with the saplings, in order to get those installed, you're talking about a larger disturbance footprint. And we're also dealing with a slope here on the coastal bank. I don't want to do a whole lot of excavation just for installation, but I think there's areas that we can carefully plant that to kind of accelerate that regrowth,
Yeah,
while
also-
promoting the younger saplings to
Was
regrow.
the original cutting done to promote view?
Yeah.
Right. And that's
Look at that opening there.
that's sort of what I'm getting at here
It was gonna be.
too as well, is that, you know, the cutting
Trying to be 10 foot.
doesn't only open up an area for vista, but it accelerates wind moving through that area and salt spray and other things that are going to change the dynamic. So having a vertical structure at least start to be put back. It doesn't all have to happen at once, but interspersing maybe 1, 2, or 3 throughout the site to kind of get some of that barrier is going to be beneficial for the other plants establishing as well.
Yeah, I think you know, planting some of the sassafras saplings in the upland buffer zone area, you know, on the flatter surface, it'd be, you know, an easier task. It just, you know, the width of the window is 25 feet roughly. So I've seen more egregious, but it's
Yeah, but that's
pretty
perfect
obvious.
from their house.
Yeah.
Lines up.
Want to go see this site, maybe on the next site visit?
Potentially, because I actually have a question about the beach path here, because I have seen like very weird assemblages of materials that this property uses to get over the marshy area, and I'm kind of curious about what that's looking like right now.
Okay.
Some of it looks placed there, and some looks like Storm brings it in, and then they kind of moved it. Yeah, so that it kind of promotes
Yeah,
their access.
I personally, I haven't been out
Down
there.
there?
It
Yeah.
is off property, so.
So some of it is, but some of it, I believe, is actually
Oh, okay.
like on their property. That might be worth making sure it's cleaned up as part of this
Yep, absolutely.
whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not that we're gonna get any brownie points for it, but on 10 there was a pool proposed here that they ended up constructing. So
I would also just ask that when we do issue it out in order, we make sure that all invasive material is being disposed of properly
Correct,
at the landfill, like we always are putting in, but just
Yep.
making sure of that.
we had spec that out, but yeah, certainly expect the
Isn't
conditions.
this like the third time these two properties been in front of us with infractions?
Two that I know.
Yeah.
No enforcement action.
No, but enough for where we had to kind of bring in,
Because you wanted like your cert, and it was a mess when we
Yeah.
went there to do the
during
inspection.
construction was,
Yeah.
No, I think that was maybe a different site,
I
because
thought-
we just filed the certs on Friday. You were talking about the, there's questions about the erosion control during construction.
but I think
They
around
had the
pool
weird
area and all that
retaining
container,
wall.
there was some,
Yes, this is
sketchy
the one
stuff
that
going
had
on.
the stuff thrown over the edge of the
Yeah,
retaining wall.
yeah.
just FYI.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that old retaining wall, previously looked like it's night and day, so it's a nice restored area.
Excuse me, has it been the same owner all along?
Correct, yep. They are looking to sell number 10, so.
Open up the view.
Just delayed
Oh my
the
God.
sale 6 months.
So yeah. Any other questions from the commission?
Just other than echoing what Seth said.
Questions from the public on this one? Looks like I've got one.
Hi there, my name is Edie Ray. Being of a very suspicious nature, I'm thinking that the sassafras that was removed may have been tallish, and maybe their removal could possibly have something to do with enhancing the view. And I'm just worried that the items that were listed that are going to be replanted aren't going to reach the same height as a sassafras would. And I'm thinking that perhaps it would be nice to have some larger sassafras planted back in there.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen in other places where, gosh, don't know how that tree disappeared, and it just seems to be a pattern. So I would respectfully request that perhaps some tall native things be included in your replanting. Thank you.
Yes, and that was part of our discussion for sure.
And I can submit just a supplemental species list with heights and stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Any other questions from the public? So are we gonna continue this and do a site visit and hopefully submit some revisions?
Yes.
Okay,
To the 8th, please.
to the 8th? Okay.
Excuse me, are you continuing to take out the slash, or are you waiting for this to do that?
I mean, maybe, I guess, because I'd like to get the honeysuckle and some of the other invasive stuff out altogether, I'd say leave it in place, and then we can remove all the woody stuff and goes to the digester at that point in time. Yeah, because we're not going to be doing any planting till the spring anyway. So.
All right, so we'll continue both of these until January 8th.
Please.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then moving on to amended orders of conditions, Alice Roche or Rochat at 100 Low Beach Road.
How do you pronounce that, Jeff? Is that Roche or Rochat? Rochat.
I think. Jeff Blackwell for the applicant. The applicant is trying to clean up some permits on their property, and it became apparent that a shed had been placed on the property without coming within the buffer zone without coming to the Conservation Commission. The owners had placed the shed on the other side of the driveway from the wetland boundary, but it's still within the buffer zone, and it was an inadvertent violation. So there is an open permit on the property for construction of a pool and cabana. So it seemed like the solution was to pick a location that is more than 50 feet away from the wetlands and also complying with the zoning setback. And we found a small window just on the west side of the cabana that had been permitted under a previous order of conditions, and that order of conditions is still valid for another 3 or 4 years. So it's kind of, this is fixing a a violation. I was gonna say minor, but they're all violations, so here we are.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Type of foundation?
Just cinder blocks. It's a Structures Unlimited shed with a
Has its own
the
floor system.
6x6 pressure treated kind of sill.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the commission? Questions from the public? Okay. So then, is there a motion to accept the amended order?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, Jeff.
Happy holidays.
Okay, so moving on in the public meeting to request for determination, Cameron Dias at 52R Surfside Road.
Good evening, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 52R Surfside. What you have before you tonight is an RDA for a house outside the 50-foot buffer zone to an off-site wetland. The wetland boundary is visible here in the lower corner of the plan. The entire property is approximately 63 or so feet away from the wetland at the closest point, so we're well outside the 50. The portions of the work that are within jurisdiction is a corner of the proposed house, a porch and a window well, and a little bit of grading and landscaping, but nothing will be any closer than approximately 62, 63 feet from the wetland. We're proposing erosion barrier along the property line to prevent any possible siltation. That's pretty much it.
This is a modular too, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
What did you say, Dave?
It's a modular.
Ah.
Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the public? Joe, does staff have a recommendation for this?
Issuing this, a negative rating for the buffer zone.
Okay. Is there a motion to issue a -3 for work within the buffer zone? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to Hope Scott Rogers at 6 and 11 East Hallowell Lane.
Once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 6 and 11 East Hallowell. What you have here is an RDA for a septic upgrade. This is an interesting property. It's 2 parcels separated by East Hallowell Lane. The northern parcel is the one that has a coastal bank and associated buffer zones on it. The only work within jurisdiction is going to be upgrade and replacement of the septic tanks and portions of a force main that are going to go across East Hallowell to the leach facility, which is outside of jurisdiction. All work is going to occur within existing long landscaped, already altered areas, and it's going to be outside the 50-foot buffer.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the public? Joe, does staff have a recommendation for this one?
Yes, recommendation on the negative rating.
Is there a motion to issue out a -3 for work within the buffer zone?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to minor modifications, 64 Wall Street LLC at 66 Wall Street.
Once again, Markowitz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 66 Walsh. This is a property that was before you with an enforcement issue recently. Previously, the commission approved the restoration of grade and the installation of a brick walkway along the side of the house. The applicant has decided to change from brick to crushed shell, more pervious, less impact. We just wanted to get a minor mod in, basically for the crushed shell. That's the only change for you with this minor mod.
Okay.
So hopefully that's very minor.
Hopefully the grade is looking good before we lay that crushed shell.
Hopefully no fill was.
The grades have been restored. We're going to be before you in a few minutes with a COC request for this, and the grading work has been done. Yeah.
Let's just wait till, yeah.
But that has been done, and the shell actually it was placed instead of the bricks. So it's an after the fact, but being, going to shell from brick, we thought would be nothing but beneficial since it's a more pervious surface.
Yeah, great. Any questions from the commission?
I think to do full scale mock-up.
Yeah. Questions from the public? Is there a motion to approve the minor mod? Accept it. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then moving on to certificates of compliance, we're starting with Boris Al Ivanov at 139 Pulpus Road.
I was not going to be here, so I'll just run over this one with you quickly. The cert in your pack, I think, shows a deer fence within the buffer zone there in the 25. So I had him go out there, and they needed the map because it's not there. It's a site plan.
Okay.
Bring it back in compliance with the deer fence, and it's all built to the permit. For
Okay, and it's not in fact there.
No, it's not there.
It's
so
not
that
there.
plan there shows it without it.
Shows
Okay,
the
so
correct,
Yeah.
okay. Unencumbered by a deer fence. All right, okay, any questions from the commission? Any questions from the public? All right, is there a motion to issue the cert?
Motion to issue.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And then we're moving on to revocable trust agreement of Elizabeth C. Nix at 43 Starbuck Road.
So I'll just go over this one real quickly because some of them came. But this was for the demolition of existing structures. Two structures were built, and then the restoration of coastal pack on the site. I think the pictures show the restoration on the site there. New structure. We went out and looked at it. It looks good.
Is there anything ongoing with this one?
Has ongoing photographs of the stored areas and the exterior lighting to be directed away from the resource area.
What numbers are those?
19 and 20, I think I actually wrote them into the search.
Any other questions from the commission? So is there a motion to issue the cert with ongoing conditions 19 and 20?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
It's going around.
Maybe, yeah.
Starbuck came by.
Right,
Sign.
yeah.
Well,
Okay, came by early.
No, wait a minute. Look at that address.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't. Joe, would you look
Yeah, I
at that?
thought that was the applicant.
You're right, it wasn't. It was,
Oh, that's two.
Popus Road.
It was stuck together, so I think you signed the first one for 139.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna wait to move forward until we pass this thing along.
So on there it has condition 19 and 20, but yeah, locked on.
Skip one and pass another.
They succeeded.
Right. Okay, so then moving on to 64 Walsh Street, LLC at 66 Walsh Street. Kind of just heard it.
Good evening, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 66 Walsh. This is the plan for the restoration of the grading, the removal of the fill, the removal of the retaining wall. After a few attempts at this, we have, the grade has been restored. We have gone out and surveyed it. We've provided a plan. I believe the plan was reviewed by both Jeff and Joanne. And I believe that we are now substantially in compliance with the grades that we were supposed to have. So hopefully we are now in a good place with this project and can close out the NOI for the restoration work.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Joe, are they ongoing? Let's go.
The only one I left
Is there
on
a
there
picture
was no fill is permitted by the board, which was number 19.
Okay.
So going forward, then we can contact them.
And that's on there. Okay, so is there a motion to issue the cert with ongoing condition 19?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Any
you.
opposed? All right,
Just went
that
for a second.
carries unanimously.
Thank you.
And we're gonna move on to Pulpus Harbour LLC at 250 Pulpus Road.
Once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicant. This is an order that is now expired. There was quite a bit of site work here. The original order approved picking up the existing house, putting a new foundation on it, doing some restoration on a boathouse, doing some other site work, including a secondary dwelling, a detached garage, second driveway, quite extensive site work on this property. As part of the order, portions of BVW buffer zone that had been cleared and turned into lawn were allowed to revegetate. Also, areas that had been vista pruned were allowed to regrow. They hadn't, the vegetation was still healthy, it was just shorter, so everything was allowed to regrow. One of the requirements was that the edge of the approved lawn be demarcated. That has been done. We feel that the work has been done substantially in compliance and would like a COC for this.
Any questions from the commission? Were there ongoing conditions with this one?
Yes, number 19 was for the monitoring vaults, including photos. 3 years. And then also, they did put on the plan, the markers for the edge of lawn.
Would
I
you
left
use?
that on there as 20 to make sure they stay in place.
Okay. So is there a motion to issue the cert with ongoing conditions 19 and 20?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
And moving on to R. Thomas and James R. Okonak, trustees at 20 and 23 Massachusetts Ave. Oh, he was here.
install the tight tank. Well, that has all been done, and they've submitted the Board of Health sign-off certificate, which you can do in the packs.
Is there any ongoing conditions with this one?
And there is no ongoing condition.
Okay. Is there a motion to issue the cert?
Motion issued.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And then we are moving into orders of conditions.
Thank you.
So we're gonna start with Britannia Nantucket Incorporated at 81 Squam Road. Any thoughts on this one from commissioners?
Seems fine.
Did you say you wanted something in building this about the Board of Health sign-off? Or is that just okay for the cert?
I think it'll require that for the cert,
Okay.
probably.
We do for the cert, but I wasn't sure if I heard you mention something before about the Board of Health.
All right. If there's no questions or additions, is there a motion to issue out the order?
Motion to issue.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. And then we're moving on to 100R Wauwinet Road Nominee Trust at 100R Wauwinet Road. Any thoughts, comments from the commission? If not, is there a motion to issue out the order?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And then moving on to Rec 21 WP LLC at 21 Washington Pond Road.
So, condition 21. So I would like that to read actually off the site, because the jurisdiction, if you look at the plan, is, you know, it's a continuous slope. And in fact, they could just pump it behind the house and then it could be, you know, come back down into our jurisdiction.
So you want a truck review?
I don't.
Yeah, truck removed off the site.
Yeah, yeah. This,
Oh, yeah, it makes sense to do that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, we had one
Yeah,
of those
we've done
prior.
that before.
And I think this is the one that we have with the silt fence to add like the straw wattles.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
'Cause Bottom slope.
and make sure that the plants are native,
Yeah.
no cultivars.
No cultivars, no hybrids, and no non-natives within the 50-foot buffer.
No, so normally Jeff just writes it as a condition, that all plantings within the 50 have to be native, no cultivars.
So that's a 23.
Yeah. Yes.
That's a change 21,
Would be,
or are you adding another one?
So for the pool shall be drained, we're just gonna put off-site, so we'll just amend that one.
okay,
To read that,
to an area off-site.
yes. And then 23 will have the no cultivars within native species within
Yep.
12% no cultivars.
Yep.
And 24, the silver
24.
fence.
Line straw will put away.
Move to approve as amended.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, we're falling asleep here. All right, that carries unanimously. It looks like that's our last one. So any thoughts, I guess, on 262 Pulpus, because we will have to issue that out next meeting.
So for that, the discussion I put, we'll have a contracted landscaper, like a contract put in place before they start the work. And then a pre-construction meeting with that landscaper.
Yep.
Those are the margin procedures.
Standard, yeah. Any other thoughts from the commission on that one?
I think let the natural vegetation grow under the existing trees.
Right, so like the photo monitoring.
Yeah, so it's not manicured.
Yeah,
Do we want the 4-inch provision? Do we-
yes, the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all
and then-
trees, yeah.
Are we gonna also require that the trees larger than that get added to the plan?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I think that one's ready for the next meeting. Okay, so then moving
TBH,
on to
yeah.
other business, approval of minutes. Has everybody looked at the minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Terry.
Yes, thank you. Monitoring reports.
So they're the ones for 10 and 12 that Brian went over today.
Mhm.
Meeting.
And then
Stored area on 10-1 North Beach.
So we're gonna go.
Those would be site
have a look at
visits.
it.
Yeah, I mean, the pictures were actually included in the pack. to
Yeah,
show you that
they're at the
stored.
end.
I think in the bottom of the pack there included the monitoring
Yeah.
pictures.
Mhm.
Take a look at.
Okay.
They looked there when we were out of the site.
Yeah. All right, so those are
I'd be able to-
there for everybody's viewing pleasure. And then moving on to continued discussion of SE 48 2824 nourishment material. And I do want to remind everybody to try and not repeat what's already been said and to keep the discussion to the current enforcement and nourishment material.
This was already submitted, but I didn't know if it had been distributed, so I wanted to just make sure you
Yeah,
had it.
actually, the pack, I think you saw it, there's a separate pack.
Is-
for-
Right,
So
right,
this
yeah,
one-
yeah, we did get it.
You did get it, okay.
It's dated, oh,
It's from Monday,
yeah.
and then there's a plan at the back. Although I think they were submitted separately, it's the same thing.
Thank you.
Separate from regular content.
Right. So, just Stephen Cohen and Jamie Feely for SBPF, and I don't know if you've had a chance to review the materials that were submitted, but we've talked to OHI Engineering, which is a firm that specializes in the kind of testing that's involved here. I am not well versed on this information, so you'll forgive me if I don't say it technically, but there are only a few licensed contractors that do this kind of work. It's not done by a wide range of contractors, and OHI, I'm told, is one of the best and able to do the work within 3 weeks, which we think is a really good timeline, especially given the holidays. So as I understand it, DEP guidelines for this kind of testing suggest doing a sampling every 1,000 feet, but given the fact that this sand has likely been mixed, we think it makes sense to do it every 500 feet. So we would get a better sampling sample. So, you know, there's a explanation in here of how they would go out and do these transects and come up with where the samples are. But essentially it's one sample every 500 feet. So you have 16 samples in the sand that was distributed. What?
50 feet. You mean 50 feet? You mean
50? Yeah, every 50 feet, sorry, yeah. Long day. We'd end up with 16 samples that are of the deposited sand and 8 samples from the beach to see, one, if anything has gone down onto the beach, and also somewhat as a control. So there would be 24 samples. Each of those would be done with a 4-foot tube that would be inserted into the ground and taken out, and there would be some testing done on site and some testing done off site. That testing follows DEP guidelines for testing when a septic system is involved, which would cover everything associated with biologicals, and also testing that's done for dredging spoils before those spoils are then redeposited on the beach as a way to see if there are any chemical or other contaminants. We think that the timeline and the process and the protocols are, you know, good, and happy to get right on it. And then we would propose to follow through with the debris removal, both on a daily monitoring basis to make sure that anything that becomes exposed is cataloged and removed, and also that when the testing comes back, as long as the results suggest that there's no concerns, that we could then do what we said last time, which was essentially push in front of and on the side of the tubes about 10,000 cubic yards of material, which would be, you know, taken out in storms, and then that material would be replaced into the template on a period, you know, a schedule as allowed, and we've determined and confirmed that there would be sufficiently available material to be able to do that, although we wouldn't put it all back all at once. It would be, you know, periodically. I think that, oh, and I think, is that everything? Is that, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it'll still be somewhat
Sure.
phased with you needing to check in with us on results and things
Yeah,
like that
yeah,
before
I
we
think-
proceed.
What do you mean?
Before, like, you would proceed with the debris
Oh, yeah, yeah.
removal and furthering that.
Right. I wouldn't
process.
anticipate doing any pushing over until after the results come back and check in with you, not just submit the report and go do the work.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So when we get the results back, we would then schedule to come in either for a Monday meeting or Wednesday meeting or whatever, but we'd want to do it as soon as possible, and let you review the report and give your blessing of it, or well, not blessing of it, but, you know, the okay to move forward.
Any questions from the
So
commission?
it's 3 weeks when they can come do the testing?
No, I think all in, right?
Or the testing has been already done?
No, it hasn't been done.
Dwight.
What?
You talked to Dwight.
Yeah. So we think that they could be done in as little as 3 weeks.
Done doing the testing or done with the results? Testing and results?
Both.
Both, okay.
Right?
Why don't you
Yeah.
say approximately?
I mean,
Okay.
approximately,
I just
yeah.
was- I didn't know.
I mean,
the order. You know, I know the order, but I didn't know.
Pending weather and.
It's 5 days, 5 days once they get everything all the site work done and off
Yeah.
island is what we've been told. So I mean, there's going to be some variability, but they're willing to jump right on it for us.
That's
Right.
awesome.
If
That's
the
good.
if the weather works and all that, it could be done in as little as 3 weeks.
Okay.
But you know, until we
So from testing to results in as little as 3 weeks.
from signing the contract to getting the report, I guess I would say.
So we need an additional 8 samples taken between the mean high water and the mean low water mark as well. That was codified in the enforcement order that we were going to sample the template, the toe to the mean high water, and the mean high water to the mean low water. So we would.
So you want those other 8 just?
Yeah, in the intertidal zone. That we specifically called that out in the enforcement order.
Okay, we can make that adjustment, and they would just be in the same locations, but seaward.
Yeah, at low tide, I'm assuming. And then I do have. I do think there are some missing criteria in the chemical and biological constituents that you're testing for. Notably, I think it's important to test for pH, especially with man-made materials like brick, which we know are highly alkaline. Getting that in there would be good. Also, testing for nitrates great, but we generally, when we do nitrogen-based testing, we do nitrates and total nitrogen, and it would also be good to see phosphate and phosphorus in that as well.
All right, I can't write that fast. Can you?
pH, total nitrogen, phosphate/phosphorus.
Any other thoughts, comments from the commission?
Well, I'm curious as to what coliform means in this setting. What type of bacteria is it? Do you know? Sam?
Yeah.
Fecal coliform.
Yeah.
Just fecal.
Yeah.
Okay.
They did warn us that they get false positives from animals, but that
Right.
you know, we should be able to tell
Right.
by the volume.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a tough test in that area. If you're doing total coliform, you're going to get material from the environment as well. But the scale of fecal coliform coming from a anthropogenic source is way higher than you would expect. So they can parse that out.
Any other thoughts or comments from the commission?
The only thing, I guess, since there's going to be natural variability in this, that you keep us apprised of, progress, so we know, excuse me, as we get to know when we get more of a date certain,
Yeah.
to have something to actually look at, because we all want to move as quickly as possible, because we don't want those
Yeah.
geotubes, exposed for any length of time unnecessarily. So so we could ask, I guess.
Well, I believe they're on for January 8th for some other business, I think we were gonna talk about some of the other conditions, the failure criteria. Yeah, that if this was done, you
Yeah,
could give us
potentially.
an
I'm sure,
update anyway.
Jamie will be coordinating it, and I'm sure through Jeff or Joanne or whoever's available in the office, he would keep them informed of what dates things are scheduled in case the staff wants to come view it or whatever.
Okay.
And just let the commission know too, the 15th of January at 4 o'clock is in between the 2 regular conservation commission meetings. It's 3 weeks to test results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To come in earlier for that and sit down separately.
Yeah, I
That
think
works
that's
for your
good.
agenda.
Yeah.
Can you make that happen or not?
So my other question for you guys, as you're removing debris daily, have you started logging that?
With photos.
Okay, and I think we should proceed with getting a mass or a volume of the material removed. Because I think that's important for us to quantify what went down here.
Well, we actually asked them.
Yeah.
Or did you find a site of storage?
I haven't yet, but I mean, I will start. I thought that when we talked about that, that would be part of the larger effort. So, but I mean, right now we have it in trailer, but it's with other stuff. So we'll start now.
Yeah, I think that needs to definitely be separated out as coming from the template, because I know there were issues with that other possible source location, just to make sure that, you know, what's coming off of your template gets recorded.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some overlap on the southern end there. So when we start the process, what I was hoping to do is probably start with 85 in that whole southern end and try and get that cleaned up so we can push material in that direction. So it'd be kind of one pre-existing cleanup and then to do the template in one consistent, continuous effort.
Okay.
But that way we can keep the material separate, and this is having to do with the bluff, and this is having to do with what's coming out of the template itself.
Okay.
And there is overlap on the southern end.
Right.
So you've probably been there or you've seen the pictures, but just in case I know for the record, what Jamie's saying is not only would we be picking up the debris from the template, but from the bluff up, there's a lot of debris coming out of the bluff there, and our intent is to sort of scale the bluff and take it out, including cutting out pipes and tubes and wires that are currently protruding, and that will soon, you know, at some point just come out anyway during storms. So we want to be proactive and remove as carefully as we can that material that's going to come out anyway.
Okay. So let's just make sure if we're taking that off the beach, that again, it's kind of separate from what's coming off of your template currently.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Great. Any other thoughts from the commissioners?
Well, I'm just looking at sewage sludge. Contains high amounts of human pathogenic bacteria. Includes salmonella, listeria, Escherichia coli, Campylobacteria, Clostridium, etc. Yersinia. So, is that something we might want to test for, or do you feel that just the fecal levels alone will tell us what's happening?
I would have to check the test, but my understanding of total coliform versus fecal coliform includes those other. But
Okay.
I would have to check the test that they're using.
I believe that's true based on my conversation with Dwight also, but Dwight Dunk, but I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that.
We should make sure that those things are being tested.
Right.
Yeah. The protocol that's being used is the protocol for testing soils from a septic field. So I assume, or my understanding is it covers the things you listed.
Right, and if it doesn't, we can make sure they get added.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a problem to make sure we're doing the right test.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions, concerns from the commission? Okay. I am going to open it up to the public for questions. Again, I would like to remind everybody, please do not repeat yourself from previous meetings, and try and keep it as concise as possible. Public. Okay.
Hi there, Edie Ray. I think maybe I'm a bit confused. I think that Mr. Cohen said that they're using guidelines that have to do with dredged material being put from one place to the other. I don't recall that this is dredged material. Am I missing something here?
The DEP guidelines for beach nourishment often specify dredged material because that's the source for many places.
Because they scoop it up from the ocean and plop it on the beach.
So part of the DEP guidelines, it's for testing dredged material, but it's really any material going onto the beach or bluff.
So since it's not dredged materials, can you guys not use a different measure of testing? Like for, if like something that is more, that makes more sense for this particular problem, where you've scooped some up from a dump site basically and plopped it on the beach?
So some of the guidelines they're using are specific to leach field sediment testing.
So
But
the-
isn't a leach field though different? Because with my husband's former career, we talked a lot about poop at our house, so isn't a leach field different than a construction zone? So I guess I'm still confused.
So I guess what metrics would you be looking for us to test in addition to what's listed? Because we don't have our own, unfortunately, as the Nantucket Conservation Commission, so the guide to us is the DEP, but we are,
I'm not sure that she knows, that Edie knows what is being tested for, so.
Edie, this is a little-
Do you,
Yeah.
did you see the
I
list?
think I didn't see the total list there, but there were some other things that sort of popped into my brain. It's like, copper and zinc. I mean, because it's not a leach field and it's not a dredge thing. I'm just thinking maybe,
Yeah.
Well, there are 8
Copper and
metals here, so
Well,
there's
see,
arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, selenium, and silver. are
Not
being
saying,
tested.
but yeah.
so some of the standards for testing dredge material are probably more scrutinized than what we're looking for.
okay,
It's really comprehensive, and having spent many years in the dredge industry, when the state and the Army Corps of Engineers sets these standards, they're covering heavy metals, lead, all that stuff in areas of maintenance dredging, all that stuff, and around harbors and marina stuff, set it to the bottom, gets in
Right.
the mud, and then they're looking for all that.
okay, so these standards are good standards for what is being
I
done?
believe so, I think so.
The only soil
And it's spelled out here, which we
Yeah.
gave to you.
The only soil tests that I know of that would be more restrictive than what is considered currently in this protocol would be a soil test you would undertake for an agricultural reason, and I don't think that is
That does,
Doesn't-
you're
that's
not gonna be
doesn't really
growing
apply
corn.
here. Yeah, I think that there may be some constituents that we've missed that we need to highlight, like I highlighted pH and total nitrogen,
Right.
but in general, this is a very robust array of sampling here.
Okay, and is there would there be any benefit to testing, taking sort of a sample from where this stuff came from, like from the source site, to sort of take a look?
I would say
Because you
all
might
of
have
it
lost
fill
some
and-
stuff with all the
Yeah.
rain and the tide and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I'm just
won't
afraid
know.
that some other stuff might have come from another job site and then backfilled it, and then who knows if
Yeah.
and if there's a house on top of it now and
Yeah,
there's been
what's that?
painters there, it just
Plasterers
can,
Yeah.
might
Okay.
add more confusion
Yeah.
to what's going on.
Okay, and there's not going to be any more dumping until all of this is resolved, is that correct?
They have a cease work,
Okay,
yes.
all right, thank you. I'm a little less confused.
And we will be requiring them to sample in the intertidal zone. So if
I
things are
heard you,
washing
yeah.
off, we'll
Yeah, well,
hopefully catch it in there if it's not too late.
Yeah, and while the enforcement is open, we can add tests if something is of concern.
Okay, and my sense from you guys is that you want this done right and quickly, but not so fast that it compromises results, correct?
Right.
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Any other public comment? RJ.
Okay. RJ Turcott, Nantucket Land Council. I'm going to hand out Yvonne Valancourt's comments. She wasn't able to make it tonight. So. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Archie.
And I printed 2 copies of the work that she's referring to in her comments, which is similar soils provision guidance from DEP, from Mass DEP, and I gave one to Joanne, but I have one more copy if you guys are interested in looking at it. Okay, everyone has one. So her comments are basically that also this is currently what Epsilon submitted is for dredge material, and that there is guidance out there for not dredge material. That DEP guidance, and then she refers at the end to the state of New Jersey's DEP, which has specific guidance for testing contaminated fill. That's not dredge material. That came from a land source. And in her comments, she also details to be certain that it's not a composite sample the way it is for sieve testing, that it's a discrete sample from depths in the template. So sort of to what the point Edie was making, there is guidance out there on stuff that's not dredge material, stuff that came from land. Specifically, the New Jersey document she refers to at the end, that's a 58 pager, and I don't have that kind of toner, so I wasn't going to print that. But it's online, it's available.
So in both the material submitted by Yvonne and comments by Edie, both had requested copper and zinc tests, so maybe we need to consider adding a zinc test.
Oh, those weren't on the list of metals that Ian.
Copper's on there, but zinc is not.
Zinc, okay.
So, Steve, who is doing the testing again?
OHI engineering.
OHI engineering.
Yeah, if you look at the plan, it has contact
Oh,
information.
thank you. I guess the reason why I asked was, do we want to request that a representative come and discuss the findings with us at the end of the testing?
That would probably be a good idea.
Yeah.
Who were you gonna have?
I mean, I guess it depends on the time frame between when the report is done and when the next meeting is scheduled.
And all of it's, you know,
You say 3 weeks for testing the results. So based off the date we're on now, we're looking at the January at the earliest, which is our next meeting before we even maybe get the results back.
Right.
So I think we need to figure out a timeline of like meetings when that's.
So it would probably be the January 15th meeting.
Because you need time to receive it.
Yeah,
and
review it.
Comment and bring it, you know, need everything in by 10th essentially to be able to review it by the 15th and get everybody.
And the public wants to see it as well.
Right.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah,
we
they
go
need to
Friday,
have comments.
Friday to the Wednesday on the 15th.
Right. That's assuming that we get the testing and the results in that time frame. I can't guarantee it won't be 4 weeks. So.
Right, which
Oh, yeah,
was at the 22nd meeting. I mean, once
Well, you're going to
we
reserve a room,
approve this, when's the earliest they get to the island to do the testing?
but you're going to reserve a room for the 15th just in case.
Well, yeah, we already have it booked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we have the contract and the date set and all that kind of stuff, we'll re-coordinate with Joanne and Jeff, and if it turns out that it looks like we have to change that date, sure, we can.
So I guess my question, since I haven't read through these other guidelines, what else do they suggest we add to this testing? Or are you just saying we should review that and then look?
So I can't speak to Yvonne's comments about the copper and zinc, but I can speak to doing discrete sediment cores, because there's a lot of issues with this stuff being diluted between coming from the site and multiple truckloads and being pushed around with a bulldozer and being rained on and waves hitting it. So it's really critical to take samples at different depths and not have them be a composite sample and dilute it. And whatever concentration we do find has to be accurate. And New Jersey, the DEP there, or it might be DEM there, but that deals with that a lot. And like I said, it's specific to land. Yvonne submitted this today, so I haven't gone over it with a fine-tooth comb either. But the fact that it's specific to terrestrial fill and not dredge material, I think is relevant.
Yeah, I mean, we can require discrete cores being sampled instead of composite. It's fine.
Well, I think that's really important. So I thought it was going to be a 4-foot cross-section that would be analyzed rather than being all mixed up together.
Right, that
Yeah,
they're
it
looking.
just doesn't, I'm just looking at the proposal we just got copies of, and so I think it'd be helpful to, I guess, to get more information that may be intended in this is what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not an expert, but we can just be more specific, I guess, make sure that it's discrete and not, combined, and then, what was the other issue? What was the other thing you just mentioned, RJ, besides the samples not being put together?
Well, the fact that it's referring specifically to fill from land and not dredge material.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just the Mass DEP regulations are, it's not a master of writing clarity, and so they kind of mix the there's paragraphs that talk about dredge sand and there's paragraphs that talk about sand, and so so I think those it's not as clear as one would like.
Right, and a couple times 314 CMR mentions fill, but it's not specific.
Right, yeah.
They don't clarify, and the New Jersey document does specifically just talk about fill that you used as nourishment material and how it should be tested if it's suspect.
No, I agree, and it would be better for the applicant to do discrete testing as well, because if it's only one area of contamination, that'll be easier to remediate.
Right, and if it was one truckload that was bad, and it might only be in the northeast corner of the template, which is why it's important for it to not be a composite, which I think was the gist of Yvonne's comments.
It does say in the second page that it's going to be a 4-foot
Tube.
clear plastic tube that will be cut open and sliced. So I'm saying, I'm guessing that you would see the striation and the different color sand and etc. So I can't imagine them mixing it up.
Yeah, I didn't read it.
Probably labeled and numbered.
I also read it like that it was going to be discrete core locations, but we can just memorialize that.
Yeah, just to
add
be
that into the
certain.
writing, just to be certain.
Yeah, well, the specific number of discrete grid point sample is composited within each laboratory sample. Yeah, so it is a little bit.
Because if they're taking 8 cross-sec grids, 4 from each, that's a lot more samples than I think what was originally stated. Which is just a question. I mean, that might be what they're planning on doing in the first place, but it's important to clarify as far as concentrations or whatever's in the material goes, in the fill.
Mhm.
Well, it's unfortunate we don't have an expert to actually do some analysis right now, or have the OHI, someone representing them to tell us.
Yeah.
Can you reach out to them and then just have them send a letter to Jeff and Joanne? To
So this issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a good idea. Have them explain in further detail what they'll be doing and why they're using that process.
Yeah, just so your contract is concise and they're doing the right thing, and then just keep us up to speed, Joanne, I guess.
Yeah, I think having the contractors submit that process to you in advance in more detail is fine.
Any other thoughts or comments, RJ?
So going forward, 3 weeks, a month, whenever the results do come in, if it turns out this is contaminated, it came up last meeting for the sieve analysis and the sand, but we believe that fines, although they're not financially going to make a difference, they're still important. The fact that this project is looking to expand, it's looking to continue into the future, when DEP is looking at it, when the community is looking at it, when other states and other regulators are looking at it, it's important to look at it and say they remediated it and they were fined going forward, even if financially it's not going to make a difference. And so that was the other comment I had.
Thank you. I think once we get results of this testing, we'll be discussing,
Of course.
yeah, further remediation and responsibilities for the applicant.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just, it's Edie Ray again, just one more clarification. So the OHI Engineering Company is going to be sending people to the island to do the sampling, that's correct?
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Cohen mentioned that some tests would be done on site, and then some would be, I guess, the samples carried off to have testing done at the lab off island. Do we know what samples, or when they write up how all they're going to do this, will that be specified as to what is done on site versus what is done in the lab?
Can either of you come up and speak to that?
You mean, will the report say where the work
No, like what soil tests are they able to do on the beach, on site versus being sent off to their lab? Like what's the protocol for the testing, I guess?
I don't know, but I think that will be covered in what Joe asked for.
In the methodology?
Having
Yeah.
a more detailed protocol submitted in advance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deanne.
Deanne Atherton, Nantucket Coastal Conservancy. This is something I know nothing about, but I did want to make a suggestion. Is the commission has retained an independent reviewer to review, for instance, the annual report. It just seems to me, in something as important as this, to have an independent reviewer or an independent monitor kind of go through this process. I think that having that would be of a benefit not only to you but to the public, to have confidence in the findings. And clearly this is an expertise that we have at the field station, so it might be a simple matter of retaining someone to do an independent review or an ongoing independent monitoring of the process with the applicant. So hopefully you will consider that.
Thank you. I think we mentioned that last meeting, and Jeff made it sound like it was a possibility for us.
No, I think it absolutely makes sense, obviously, at this juncture.
I think even the findings go to DEP, don't they? I think that was something else you said he had to send.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I think it's gonna get looked over twice.
But I think as far as us ultimately making a decision on remediation or potential fines, it is helpful to have a third party
Definitely.
to discuss or describe the results.
Absolutely.
So Joe, I don't know if that's something that is still in the works. Yeah. What they proposed. Yeah. So I think in because I kind of asked about this, Jeff made it sound like if we were happy with these initial tests that we could get those going, and then if there was anything that came up while this enforcement is still open, we could ask for those additional tests. So if an independent reviewer looked at this and said, oh my gosh, big red flag, this was forgotten, it is within our options to then ask for that test to be done.
Yeah, we're not closing the door.
Right, because this is an open matter, so I don't know how the other commissioners feel about that.
Yeah, I am a bit concerned now that there is some confusion about the discrete versus the composite sampling. And if it's one thing to sample additional parameters that we miss, but if we inadvertently use the wrong sampling method and then go to try and
Right, then it's
repeat it
all
again,
gone.
then we've lost the opportunity.
So I'm gonna go back to my client and the engineers and tell them that you have requested that we add 8 more samples in the intertidal zone at low tide, that we add testing for pH, and testing for total nitrogen, testing for phosphate and phosphorus, and was zinc on the list too?
Zinc, yeah.
Zinc, and I think you said copper, but that's already on the list.
It's in the metals.
And that we make sure that the sampling is done for the testing is done for each of the 24 discrete samples, not as a composite, and that we provide protocols from the contractor before the work is done. If there's any pushback from the contractor who has some good technical or scientific reason to say no or whatever, we'd certainly be in touch. But otherwise, I would assume that is how we would proceed. That works, and I'll have that updated. I don't know that we're going to have Epsilon submit another letter, but it'll show up in the protocols. I think it's probably the best way to update it. Is that?
So then you wouldn't begin any of these tests?
Well, I think what I think we would do is intend to, from tonight, move forward to hire the contractor, sign it, and have them arrange for a date to come do the work and, make that happen. And in advance of the work happening, have the protocols sent to Jeff. And in the interim, if there's some concern, you could certainly reach out to us. But our goal is to get out there and test it as soon as possible.
Right, so that's where I just want to make sure the commission, that we would essentially vote that we are okay with them starting, because that's part of what we have to do.
I think we're talking about having an independent reviewer look at the protocol, aren't we? Isn't that what unless we have full confidence in OHI as an independent assessor rather than one that is paid by SBPF.
Yeah.
I don't mean that rudely.
Yeah,
I'm sort of fumbling here.
I guess the only thing that concerns me with waiting for them to do the protocol is it could be a month before any of this even begins.
It's gonna slow it down.
And if we can ultimately go back and say, well, you missed this test.
Then they still have kept the samples, you mean, so that they can go back to the sample?
Well, maybe that could be part of the protocol.
Yeah.
That
I don't think that's overweight.
they maintain, like
Retain the samples.
retain the samples so that if another test has to be done.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Is that something?
I think we would like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, obviously, all of this is outside my knowledge, but I don't know why that would be a problem. We're only talking about a matter of weeks at the most, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I think we all have the goal of avoiding any delays. So, certainly if you decide you want to have somebody look at those protocols and make some suggestions, that's not objectionable. But if it means waiting a month, I'm not sure that there's as much value added there. Even though I understand your concern, Ian, OHI is pretty, arm's length from SBPF. They are a professional, certified, licensed contractor, not, some guy we know.
Some guy, some guy who knows a guy.
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty far off, and these are, technical experts with licenses that we don't have an ongoing relationship with.
And Joe, you said, or I couldn't quite catch. Has Jeff or have you started reaching out to find, an independent reviewer for this, so we can have somebody, on board as quickly as possible to?
Well, I haven't, and my thought process is probably that Jeff was gonna hire someone at the result stage to maybe take a look at it like we did with Boris Al Ivanov in the last report that we got.
Or at least wait for the protocol to come out.
So review something if that's the way you wanna go based off the results.
Yeah, so I would think we'd want somebody, in earlier, to look at the methodology, the protocol, so nothing, it's clear that what they're doing fulfills all those things that you just listed, which I think covers everything we've been talking about. So just make sure that we have somebody, identified as quickly as possible as well.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Important. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and we don't want more wind and rain washing more of this stuff out before we can get these tests done. Like, that's what worries me, is the more we delay,
Oh, absolutely.
we're gonna lose. So that's why, I mean, it would be my feeling that maybe we make a motion tonight to allow them to keep doing their daily inspection, debris removal, categorize and photograph that, store it, get a weight or volume, and then that you would be proceeding and getting this testing started. While confirming that it's discrete test locations.
Yeah, the list I read.
Yeah.
And so we will definitely do that, and if the protocol comes in and Jeff has a chance to run it by somebody and they have a great idea, or whatever, before the work is done, or even after, when we still have the samples, the goal is to get confidence, not quick. I mean, we want quick too, but we want to have confidence that the right tests have been done as well.
Okay.
So.
Are there any more comments from the public?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Burton Balkind. Just as an aside, I walked the template and the tow today, and I didn't see any debris like we saw before, so I was glad to see that. And then chain of custody for the samples. I know it's probably in the protocol somewhere, but I just want to make sure that it is you guys address that as, I don't know if it's photographic evidence of them taking the samples and then signed transfer from the samples to the testing, but I think that should be part of the program at some point.
Yeah, it's in the letter.
Okay, thank you. I haven't seen the
Yeah,
letter.
it says
Okay.
here, containers can be labeled, logged, and shipped under chain of custody procedures to independent Massachusetts certified lab.
Awesome. And I might maybe, as a photography from each site, I don't know if that's overboard or not, but it was something I think you guys should take into consideration. And then the other thing, which I might be repeating myself, and you can stop me, Ashley, if I am, I'm still a little concerned about them pushing 10,000 yards of template mitigation sand over the edge to, once the testing has been done. I just want you guys to think about the fact that we're going to be pushing all this sand onto the beach and how that's going to affect the beach, the profile, and the surrounding area. So, thank you.
I appreciate that. I am sure there will be more discussions before we proceed at that step. Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked into OHI very cursorily, but from my initial insight, they definitely have the technical expertise and the licenses that we'd expect for this type of work.
Any other questions from the public? Concerns? Okay. So I guess with that, is there a motion to okay them moving forward again with the daily removal of debris, and to proceed with the chemical and biological testing that we discussed tonight?
With the enhanced protocol.
With the enhanced protocol.
So,
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, can I just be sure, because I'm not sure, I know we want to go to it quickly, but do we want to go to it before we've had a chance to look at the protocol?
well, that was my point.
So I was thinking we were gonna say that as soon as we get.
So that will mean they will not get going until
So this is
after
a
all of the
preliminary protocol.
holidays.
So-
We would have to have a special meeting under the open meeting law to discuss it unless we defer to their expertise. And
Well, this is a preliminary protocol, and he's agreed to have them add everything we just requesting.
I know,
Right.
but I guess it's, you know, it's, I mean, we're all kind of laboring under the same, we all wish we had more particular expertise here, and so that's, you know, we have, thank God we have, you know, we have a lot of expertise.
So
but not
let's take a
necessarily-
vote on this and see where we lie.
Okay.
I hate to say it might be split, but I
Okay.
think we just gotta
Okay,
do it out, because I do not foresee a special meeting coming in between now
Yeah,
and the
the
holidays.
quorum, especially with already
It's-
missing a
yeah.
member.
So, is there a motion?
Have we left anything out? Do you feel we've left anything out in this motion?
well, it, good, this is, I'm really tired.
Well, the motion is.
Yes, as you mentioned, Ashley, the, you know, I would want to add something about, you know, review of the protocol, but I understand that that is, you know, you want to move forward, and I'm kind of in between on it, so,
But we're asking for a more detailed protocol to be submitted during this process.
oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I think that's part of, you know, during the process, but in terms of starting the actual testing, once they get OHI they have to get them hired, and that will take, and drawn up, you will see some written version of what we discovered and, you know, what we discussed tonight and what you had on your little notepad. So if we get, you know, by the time we get that,
So
if we had, but if we have all that written down, if that's all, you know, in it, you know, gets to us before, obviously, will have to get to us before we start testing, can we, because I'd wanna see that just in writing.
So again, I'm gonna say we take it to a vote, because I just
Okay,
don't
alright,
know that
okay,
that
I'll-
is
I'll-
possible,
okay.
unfortunately.
All right, I understand.
Chairman,
I
I
can-
know we're all tired, but I just want to address this, that, you know, this is dependent on what Steve said, that OHI is a reputable company. So we've asked them to give us, it will be reviewed, a more detailed protocol with the additions that we've added. And I think under the circumstances, with, you know, the timeline being what it is, that we're covering all our bases, basically.
Well, we've expanded our parameters and we're gonna have a third party reviewer, so and they're gonna keep the samples, so I think
Right.
we kinda.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I did, I mean, I
Which is vote.
specifically asked,
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
that we
listen,
could
if you-
add conditions after the fact if tests came up that we missed.
So this is the first round of testing.
This is
Then
the
come back with
first
the
round.
results, and then from that, decide we want to have more, they'll have the site sample to then go and do extra testing. In the
Yes.
interim, we can bring somebody in, a third party reviewer, to explain the first round of testing. And then if you decide to do more testing.
I do just have one technical consideration that you just brought up in my mind. If they're taking the tests and then they're shipping them to a licensed lab, then the sand's going to be in the lab. So they would need a contract with the lab to say that the lab is going to retain that sand, because generally after tests happen, the material's just disposed. The material's not going to be in their possession anymore.
I thought you said
But I
the
think that-
contract, they have that in there.
Yeah, Steve
The
was
chain
gonna
of custody.
recommend that they hold on to it until.
Yeah, I mean,
we
it's
kinda
not-
sign up.
It's not currently in the contract, but.
It needs to,
I assume
yeah.
that we could add that.
Be that
Yeah,
specific,
I mean,
yeah.
and I know it's kind of a rare procedure for labs to hold on to material, so you would need to make
Yeah.
that
No,
well
I assume
thought out with
that
them.
if we pay extra,
Yeah.
that they can,
I'm sure they'll.
some period of
Yeah, yeah.
time, retain the material.
Yeah, you
Right.
just have to make that
Right,
spelled out.
and the retention of the material would presumably be done under, you know, proper protocols to maintain, you know, heat sampling and chain of custody and those kind of things.
Okay.
So
I vote that we allow SPPF to move forward.
I
with
second
the-
that.
With the modifications that we propose.
Agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that carries unanimously, allowing them to continue their daily large debris removal and proceed with the beefed up chemical testing and biological testing that we discussed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch through Jeff and Joanne with whatever we can get.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Yeah,
Happy
happy
holidays.
holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
All right. Reports. Crack.
We met yesterday, and in a nutshell, we're gonna provide a synopsis of 7 different plans: hazard mitigation plan, municipal vulnerability preparedness plan, Nantucket master plan, coastal management plan, Nantucket and Nantucket harbors action plan, storm surge and inundation pathway, coastal resilience strategies document when it arrives. So the RFP going forward to the consultants.
Awesome.
Nice.
Sounds exciting.
Wish I was there.
So actually, Ian, do you mind if I add something to that?
Oh, no, no.
Yeah, 'cause I
I know you
finally-
were there, yeah.
I had a chance to
Right.
attend that one, and, we still don't have the coastal resiliency plan, and
From
they're having
Crane
trouble
and Broom.
prying it out of the hands of the consultant for some reason. So I think it should be on our record as well that this is something, to me, it's quite unusual that you hire a consultant and then they don't give you the work product when they promise to, and they don't get back to you and things like, it's a very
And they've been paid?
situation. And
They're
they're
on retainer, I think.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of work to do. I mean, you have a lot of work to do.
Well, Dave volunteered. actually.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
All right. CPC.
We had a brief meeting, and 4 projects are moving forward, just small little amounts, but one was just the Coffin School, redoing the metal fencing in front of it, so that's kind of big one project rebuilt, but otherwise, meeting January 21st, so short and sweet.
NP and EDC.
Yeah, no meeting since then, and we've got one, I think, on the 21st. No, that's correct. Well, anyway, there's a meeting in January, and I'll report after that one.
Okay. Awesome. No mosquito control. No other commissioners' comments.
There's a project on Sankaty Road that's, so it's, I forget the number, I think it's 65. And it's a DEP number and construction, and I believe it's 65. There's just seems like a lot of debris in the job site, and I don't, yeah. I'll give you the exact number, but it's,
Any other commissioners' comments?
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
You and your family.
Administrator staff reports. Awesome. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Jeff can say,
Thanks, Joe.
I know you're talking. And then
Are you staying on island for Christmas, or?
in between, we go up and see Aunt's family, my wife's family, Vermont.
Oh, where in Vermont?
Not in Vermont.
Oh, I thought you said Vermont.
Her mom.
Oh, her mom, oh, okay.
Who's in Westwood.
Oh, okay, oh, so not too far.
But my wife is right there.
I admire your knowledge.